The governor, along with Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge, met with President Bush at the White House, and they answered reporters' questions on the White House driveway for about 15 minutes. Again, this a little bit earlier today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jim Gilmore, Governor of the state of Virginia, Chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism, Weapons of Mass Destruction, and Local Response. I'm pleased to be here with my good friend and close colleague, Governor Ridge of Pennsylvania. I'll just say a few words. Governor Ridge will say a few words. We'll answer any questions that you might have. It was good to be here today with the President, particularly when he made this announcement that he is successfully working in partnership with members of the technology community to set up communications and abilities for Americans to be able to respond and to communicate. We're very proud of the success that he's had generally and the hard work that he's done on behalf of the people in this time of crisis. This is a situation at this point that is, I think, going to be a long process. It's one that's going to be a long time. I think that all of us grieve for the victims in New York, particularly with the catastrophe we've seen there, in Virginia, here at in Northern Virginia at the Pentagon. We're very proud of our local responders in all states, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, every place where local responders have done their work. They've done so well. Fire, police, rescue, health, they've all done just so well, and we're so proud of them. And naturally, the terrible job is still ongoing, both in the Pentagon and also in New York City. The President, I think, is showing extraordinary leadership in this time, but the years or time ahead, I think, will be a difficult one. But we're all behind this great leader of this country, and I look forward to working with him as governor of the state. Tom.
Good afternoon. I think it's during times of crisis that the personal qualities that so many of us knew were within our friend, then Governor Bush, come to the fore for the rest of the country to see. And I was very pleased to join him today as we celebrate and commend the extraordinary response of Americans throughout this country, but particularly in the East, as we've dealt with the crises and the challenges of New York City and the Pentagon, and to an equally tragic but lesser extent in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I think what the President did today, and what he continues to do, what he's been doing for the past 7 days, and what he continues to appeal to the better angels of the nature of American citizens and the nature of compassion that I know he believes fervently dwells within every American. The response has been extraordinary. And what the President, I think, is trying to ask Americans to do is to understand that the way you can respond as individual citizens is to go about your task as an American citizen, whatever that task might be. Just be better at it, work at it every single day. If your task is a worker in a plant or facility, be a better worker. If you're an employer, be a better employer. If you're an entrepreneur, think creatively about how you can harness the energy of your talent with the energy and talent of other people's to create new products and new things for America. If you're a teacher, be a better teacher. So again, as I say, we rally behind the President, and I know people are looking for things to do to support this President. But the President feels strongly that the country can and will be stronger, the heart will beat stronger, and if every American accepts the challenge that the President has given, that is to accept whatever task we have in our daily lives, be it personal or professional, and just go at them and be stronger and better at it, then we truly will be a better place. Because one thing we know, and I'll conclude with this, these terrorists, they destroyed some buildings, but the buildings don't represent the economic and military strength of this country. They snuffed out lives, innocents, thousands of innocents, but they will never stamp out and never eradicate our way of life. And we admire the extraordinary work that the President has done and his leadership, and that of Mrs. Bush. Their courage and their leadership in the face of this national tragedy, we are prepared to follow. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to stand next to our President today.
Governor Gilmore, can you tell us about the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania?
Let's come here first, and then we'll come back to you. Yes, sir.
Governor Gilmore, what did the president tell you when you had an audience with him before the meeting in Rose Garden?
Before?
Yes.
The president was, I think, thoughtful. He was, of course, concerned that the country not overreact and act ineffectively when approaching the enemy. But at the same time, I think he has displayed resolve and commitment. I think he is very relaxed in his role and intends to serve as commander-in-chief in the most effective possible way. But he's very resolved about this. He cares very deeply about the victims that we have seen across the country. But he's also concerned about every other American and wants to make sure that we act in the most effective possible way in the days ahead. Tom, did you want to add?
And I think the president views not only as president of the United States and commander-in-chief, but as a world leader. This is an opportunity. Again, it's taking a tragedy and trying to turn it into something positive. And he believes, and I think we all share that belief, that this is an opportunity for us to become re-engaged in the world in a different way and to find allies and support for what needs to be an international response in a very planned, methodical way against these acts of terrorism. They are acts against civilization and humanity itself, and he sees that opportunity as well. I mean, I think we really have to take our lead from the president. He takes this tragedy and it'll never go away. It's a permanent scar on America. But it is also an opportunity for us to do things differently, both internally and externally, and he's going to seize that opportunity and provide that leadership.
And he did communicate to us the constant discussions he's had with our allies and others across the country in order to build the support that he needs in order to effectively protect the people of the United States. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Governor Ridge, I wanted to ask you what more you can tell us about the flight that crashed in Pennsylvania, and especially the president referred yesterday to someone having their throat slit. I assume that was from the Pennsylvania flight. Do you have any more details? Do you have a better sense today of what happened on that flight and how it is that it went down?
I personally have no additional information to add to that. I wish I did. The only thing I could say that the response of the families that were there, I mean, it was really overwhelming to listen to them thank the country and everybody else for how they've embraced them. I mean, they took some comfort knowing that the crew and the passengers, who may have the four groups, may have been the only one that had been alerted to what was going on with these hijacked planes. The other three may not have had that. I don't think the other three had that knowledge. There was some comfort that their sacrifice was not in vain. There was some comfort in understanding and appreciating that what they did candidly probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. Maybe some of you standing around here. You never know.
Governor Gilmore?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Reagan National is a very important airport to this capital of the United States, also to your state of Virginia. What can you tell us? Will the airport eventually be open once the security measures are in place? What have you been told, sir?
I certainly can't answer that at this point yet. I can tell you the question, of course, was what do we know about Reagan National and whether or not that's going to reopen once security measures are put into place. I haven't had any definitive communications at this point yet as to what federal authorities will or will not want to do with the airport. As governor of Virginia, my hope is that it, of course, is reopened, that security measures are put into place, and that it is reopened. It is an asset to the Washington metropolitan area. It is certainly an asset to the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I believe the security measures can, in fact, be put into place, and that would be my goal to reach for that conclusion. After all, we certainly don't want to see terrorism have that kind of impact to affect a major communications hub like that.
May I follow up on that for a second? Both of your states actually face considerable layoffs in the airline industry as a result of what has happened, perhaps, and general economic conditions. Are you talking to the president? Has he given you any indication if he's inclined to help the airline industry?
Well, of course, there have been some monies passed by the Congress in order to try to buffer some of the economic difficulties that we're seeing in the states of New York, Virginia, Pennsylvania, if there is any significant economic injury. And we're certainly quantifying all of that at this point. We didn't speak to the president about these kinds of impacts, but I can assure you that just as recently as Sunday night, I had a lengthy budget discussion in Virginia about the potential impact in the state of this type of attack
Do you
in our
think
state.
the federal government should help out with some of these security measures that are clearly going to be imposed or being imposed on the airlines?
Certainly, if these kinds of national airplane issues and airline issues certainly impact the entire nation, and I believe it is the sense of the Congress that they want to try to help out these key industries wherever they happen to be located, but particularly in the affected states.
Governor, about the local preparedness for terrorism, you said you were part of a committee on that. How prepared is America, not just New York and this area in Virginia? What about the rest of America? Are enough localities prepared for some
Well,
sort of
I'm going
bioterrorism?
to try to keep this short because I did almost an hour and a half yesterday at the National Press Club on this issue. I am the chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism, Weapons of Mass Destruction, and Local Response. That commission is congressionally authorized. It began in 1999. We're at the end of a third year of a three-year commission. We issued one report in December of 1999, a second in December of 2000. The third report I've just announced yesterday we will accelerate and bring forward so that we could file that and make that available to the executive and to the Congress at the earliest possible moment. We have always concluded that the threat was very real, less so for classic weapons of mass destruction, but almost inevitable in our view on conventional attacks such as the one we have just seen. Our view in our second report was there was a great need for a national strategy. It must include, there is no national strategy, has not ever been one. This president, when he took office, heeded the words of this commission, assigned this to the vice president. We briefed the vice president back in May. His people have been working on that at this point. A national strategy must include the state and local responders at all levels. We must be in a position to create the types of enabling legislation that we need in order to help the CIA, the FBI, and other intelligence people, particularly at this time that the president wishes to act. So the short answer is, are we prepared? I must tell you, I think states and localities are demonstrating over and over that they are eminently prepared to deal with a response. We trigger at our Emergency Operations Center. That triggers communications with FEMA. That's exactly the kind of technique we saw at the Pentagon. But we must be prepared in the event of multiple attacks or even more serious attacks with weapons of mass destruction. That requires a joint, unified strategy that needs to be put into place.
And just to follow up on that, after these attacks, have there been any additional civil defense measures taken in conjunction with the Department of Defense, with states and localities, anything like that, with police departments?
Well, I believe that all entities have taken steps in order to create additional security efforts. I'm not privy to what the federal government has done, but in our state, we, of course, stepped up security in a variety of ways. On the very first 10 minutes of the attack, we triggered our Emergency Operations Center. I put us into a state of emergency in the state of Virginia by noon that day. That enabled me to move search and rescue people north to the Pentagon and to other places as necessary. We put additional security on the Capitol in Richmond and on the governor's mansion in Richmond. We also communicated with law enforcement and asked them to inform the state headquarters that I set up immediately on any type of gunplay, hostage issues, any of that type of nature. So in short, there are already strong preparations available in the states and in the federal government as well. We believe, however, there needs to be a unified national strategy and coordination, including, by the way, and our recommendation is an office in the White House in our judgment, because only the president can really coordinate all the federal agencies the way that they need to be coordinated in our judgment.
One more follow-up on that, Governor. Has the president indicated to you when your states can, either governor, when your states can expect the reservists to be deployed? And can you give us an idea whether, share with us some of the plans for how they'll be used in your respective states?
Well, I'm sure each of us has an answer on that. Number one, we activated the Guard, as I just said, and created stepped-up activation. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the Guard in their respective states. We did that. We actually activated 600 Guardsmen. They go into a federal system only on the order of the president, and that has not occurred in any of the Guard systems up to this point. The reservists, as a separate matter, have been called, but that is a federal matter. And we do not expect to see reservists deployed in the streets of our respective states. This is a national matter. The president's preparing to make sure that the country can be properly protected. But I'm not sure exactly where your question was going, but we do not foresee troops in the streets in Virginia at this time or anywhere else in the country. And by the way, we would discourage that action in the first place.
I would just simply add that I think the men and women of both the Guard and the Reserve units around the country anticipate that some of them may be called to service not for ministerial duties dealing with the public safety in our communities and in our cities, but probably in support of a broader assault against terrorism in whatever forms the President and the Secretary of Defense choose to take over the next months and years ahead. So I think there's an anticipation that exists out there, and frankly, there's a readiness and a desire to be part of it, and they await the call.
Aren't we lucky we have such good guardsmen and reservists in this country?
Governor, could you tell us, was there something else that the President said to you during his briefing that you thought to be related to?
Well, you know, there were quite a few things that he said, but most of it had to do with his impressions of the extraordinary heroism and bravery and sense of duty that he has been personal witness to as he's visited the Pentagon, as he visited Ground Zero. I mean, it's just, you write about it and you project pictures about it, and most Americans will only get a sense of what has happened at the Pentagon and in New York City by what they read or what they see and what they hear. But like a few of the American citizens, this is a president who has been at both sites, who's talked to survivors, who's talked to volunteers. And I think personally he's been overwhelmed and gratified by the way America responds to tragedy, particularly one of such a horrible dimension that obviously affects everybody. But I think he spent most of his time in praise and just in awe of the goodness and the compassion and the heroism and the bravery of Americans. And he told us several stories, which we were very pleased to hear.
That's right. And I would add to that I think the great challenge that the President has is to exercise the appropriate restraint in order to act effectively and not out of emotion, but at the same time also to make sure that the people of the United States are protected in any further action that he chooses to take. And I think that's a fine balance right now, and I think that he's striking that balance very well.
Governor.
Okay. Thanks all.
Thank you all very much.
Governors Jim Gilmore of Virginia and Tom Ridge of Pennsylvania met with reporters several hours ago at the White House.